right? So let us take an example. Let's say there is a question. The probability of A and B sitting, okay, let us not take probabilities, we will basically take odds in favor. The odds in favor of A and B sitting in a cab are 5 by 4 by 3 and 7 by 11, right? 4 by 3 and 7 by 11. Find the probability that both A and B sits in a cab. So when I talk about this, odds in favor of A and B sitting in a cab are 4 by 3 and 7 by 11. Find the probability that both A and B sits in the cab. Now this is not probabilities, right? These are odds in favor. So if I want to find the probability of A sitting in a cab is 4 by 7, and similarly probability of B sitting in a cab is 7 by 18, right? Now when you're talking about that both sits in a cab, so what do you want actually? You want that probability of both A and B sitting in a cab is nothing but PA into PB. So it is 4 by 7 into 7 by 18, right? So it becomes very simply 4 by 18, or I can say 2 by 9. So the probability of both sitting in a cab, right, is 2 by 9, right? So this is how you can encounter questions on topics of probability. Now till now we have covered topics which are under both purview of engineering mathematics as well as aptitude part, right? You can also have higher level questions which will talk about distributions, which we will discuss in the engineering maths portion. But till now we have discussed about aptitude part as well as engineering maths portion of probability distribution. Now try to understand what is this topic saying. We already discussed about probability. The basic probabilities is nothing but the favorable cases upon the total number of cases, right? Now here we'll be discussing about some typical sort of questions which are been asked in this particular probability distribution, right? For example, we will first talk about probabilities of independent event. Now for example, let's say there is a universal set where this is A and let's say this is B. The probability of occurrence of A is PA, while probability of occurrence of B is, let's say, PB. And I want to find, let's say, probability of either A or B. You can say A union B. So can I say it is either A will happen or B will happen? No, right? Because what you have done is you have taken things twice, isn't it? What we have done is we have taken, when we are talking about PA, I am talking about this, isn't it? Right? And when I am talking about PB, I am basically talking about this region, right? So what has happened is basically there is an overlap of this much. I am marking it with black, right? This needs to be subtracted because it has been taken twice. So I'll minus PA intersection B. Intersection is a point of both, right? This is basically called as law of additional probability, or you can say addition law of probability. Clear? Okay. Now there's something called as independent events. Independent events which do not have anything to do. Independent events. Independent events are events if occurrence of one do not affect the occurrence of other are called, you can say, events in which are called independent events. Right? Basically what I want to say is, what the important thing for us is that for independent event PA intersection B will be nothing but PA into PB. This is standard result which you have to remember. Helpful, right? Now see, whatever I'm discussing here will be purely for engineering mathematics. In aptitude part, nothing of this kind would be asked to you. Now there is something called as conditional probability, a concept of conditional probability. Just a minute, I'll just make the complete. What is conditional probability? So what I'm saying is conditional probability is that if A and B are dependent events, then P B by A denotes probability of happening of B when A has already occurred. What do I mean by this? For example, let's say probability, you can say that A is representing that, I'll give you an example, that India wins the match. A is representing India wins a match, right? B represents Yuvraj hits a century. So these probabilities we know. These probabilities we know that India winning a match, a probability is given to you. Yuvraj hits a century, also it is known to you. What will be P B by A? That India has already won the match. India has win the match. We have assumed that if India has win the match, India has win the match, then what is the probability of Yuvraj hitting a century? Getting a point? He's saying that India has win the match. The event A has already occurred. What is the probability of occurrence of B? That is what is basically meaning. This is called as this is called as conditional probability. This is called as conditional probability. Clear? Now mathematically, how it is mentioned? Mathematically, we can say conditional probability can be written as, let's say, PB by A. You want to find out, so PB by A will be nothing but PA intersection B. You know, India win and Yuvraj at the century out of PA. That is basically the mathematical definition of conditional probability, right? So for independent events, you can also say PB by A is nothing but PB. Why? Because A intersection B will become PB into PA. PA will get cancels out, right? So this is basically the fundamental of conditional probability, right? Now let us also talk about one more thing that is called as measurement of central tendency. Measurement of central tendency. Next study. Here we will talk about total 5 things. Number one, we'll talk about mean. Mean is simply nothing but the average, you can say, right? So x bar, normally denoted, is nothing but sigma of xi, where I belongs to 1 to n divided by. So this is nothing but the mean. We already know this thing. It's nothing new for us. Second is mode. What is mode? We can say the highest frequency element is called as mode. For example, if a data is given, let's say 2 8 3 1 8 3 5 12 8, let's say. Now, which is the element which has the highest frequency? Frequency means which has been repeated maximum number of times. That is 8. So mode is 8. Clear? Similarly, we have something called as median. Now let's say a data is given to you, a frequency distribution is given to you. Let's say 8, 1, 3, 5 and 7, let's say. Now I want to find the median. So median is nothing but the middle value, the middle value if the data if the data is arranged in ascending or descending order. For example, the above data, if I arrange in ascending order, it will become 1, 3, 5, 7, and 8. What is the middle value? 5. That is your median. Clear? Now, we'll talk about another two things, that is variance and standard deviation. Let us understand this with an example. Let's say, let us say I have 5 parts of a same system. There is a system, and I have, let's say, 5 parts of that system, right? Parts, or 5 divisions, you can say. All the 5 divisions give me some value, some output. Let us say I have kept it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Now, sometimes you will not find that the ideal value is coming. You expected, let's say, 100 Newton to come out, but the answer is coming out to 99 Newton. So there is a deviation, right? So I want to find out the deviation of the system, the whole system. I want to find out the deviation. So what I'll do is, first I'll see the deviation with the mean value, the expected value basically, right? So the mean value, let's say, what is the mean here? If I find out the mean, what is the mean? Mean will be the sigma xi upon n. So that will be 7, right? So I actually want to find out deviation from mean. So if I find in this case, first case it will become 7 minus 5, that would be 2. Second case it will be 1. Third case it will be 0. Here it will be minus 1. Here it will be minus 2. Now if I find the mean total x bar minus xi, the total deviation will become 0. Or in any case it will become 0, because you are checking with respect to mean. So there will be certain values which will be above mean, and there will be certain values below mean. The compensatory effect will be there because mean is calculated accordingly, isn't it? So what will we say? We cannot find the deviation of the system. So for that, let us square these values. Now you see the effect, what will happen. What I'm trying to say is I'm squaring these values. So I'll get 4, 1, 0, 1, and 4. Now can I find the summation? Summation of x bar minus xi square would be 10. But this is of 5 different parts. So basically I want sigma of x bar minus xi the whole square divided by the number of trials. So I can say it is nothing but 10 by 5. So that is 2. But this you have calculated. You want the deviation, but you have to calculate the deviation of squares. So what I'll do? I'll under root this thing. So if I square root of this particular thing, sigma x bar minus xi the whole square upon n, right? This is called as, so I'll find out this mean. That is what is the deviation which I'm talking about, isn't it? And this is nothing but called as standard deviation. This is called as standard deviation, right? And the square of this, the square of standard deviation is called as variance. It is nothing but standard deviation square is called as the variance. Clear? Normally we represent standard deviation by sigma. Variance will become sigma square. Variance will become sigma square. Clear? So these are the 5 central tendency point which you have to understand, right? Now there are certain distribution theorems which will be helpful to us. Couple of them we will study here. One is called as binomial distribution. Now what is binomial distribution? Let us understand. Let's say I have n trials of an event. There is an event which is having n trials. N could be 7, 8, and we talked about earlier cases. Let's say tossing a coin, right? Tossing a coin, you have done it for, let's say, 8 times. So toss a coin 8 times, and you have to find the probability. You have to find the probability. Find probability that exactly 3 times you get head, right? Out of 8 times, exactly 3 times. I don't know which are the 3 times. Now this becomes a trouble sometimes. You know, I don't know, sir. How many sample space elements will be there total? There will be how many? 2 raised to 8. Yes, 2 raised to 8 elements will be getting. So how will you determine this particular thing? It will become very difficult, isn't it? So we have to understand this thing. What does binomial distribution says? When the number of trials is more than 2, 3, logically we cannot solve it. So what we'll say is, we'll find out probability of success. Let's say we denote it by small p. And we will also say there is something called as probability of failure. That will be q. And there will be nothing but 1 minus p only, isn't it? So in our case, what is success? How you define your success? You define your success is to getting a head. What is the probability of getting a head? Probability of success basically is p, which is nothing but 1 by 2 in our case. So what is the probability of failure? That is not getting a head, which is nothing but q, and that will also be 1 by 2 in this case, right? So according, if you know the probability of success and if you know the probability of failure, where p and q are denoting the probability of success and probability of failure, then according to binomial distribution, what it says is, out of n trials, the probability of R success is given as NCR into P raised to R Q raised to N minus R. This is probability of R success. Probability of R success. Right? So in our question, what about is asking? N was 8. 8 times I have thrown this. I want exactly 3. You want probability of 3 head in a toss of 8 coins or 8 times. P was 1 by 2 raised to 3. Q was also 1 by 2. It will be raised to 8 minus 3, that is 5. So it is nothing but 8 into 7 into 6, 83 I am solving, into 1 into 2 into 3. And this will become 1 upon 2 raised to 8. This gets cancels out, so it is nothing but 56 by 2 raised to 8. That's your probability. Clear? Right? So this is how you can solve binomial distribution. In binomial, you will also understand two, three things. Mean of a binomial distribution is given by n into p, and variance is given by npq. So what will be standard deviation? Sometimes standard deviation questions are either NPQ, under root, right? Now when the trials are more, let's say 50 trials, 60 trials, 100 trials, then NCR will also be difficult to be solved. In that particular case, we'll use a distribution theorem called as Poisson distribution. Now what does Poisson said? Poisson said that if there are n trials when the n is very large, n is large, right? Then he said that out of n trial, probability of k success, probability of k success, right, is nothing but probability of k success mathematically is given as e raised to minus lambda into lambda raised to k upon k factorial. I'll tell you what is lambda here because that is the only unknown. So what is lambda now? Lambda is called as product of n into p. Now in this case, this is also the mean as well as the variance. And don't ask me how, sir. These are practical results which will be found, right? So kth success, lambda is n into p. That n is the number of trials, p is the probability of success. P is the probability of success, right? So this is how Poisson distribution and binomial distribution are discussed. Clear? Now there is one more distribution theorem that is called as normal distribution theorem. Let us also discuss in a nutshell normal distribution. We'll solve questions maybe in the next class or the next section. But normal distribution is basically represented by a curve. Let's say it's a special curve fx. If it is also solve 1 upon 2 pi sigma square e raised to x minus mu upon 2 sigma square, and you are squaring this particular. If this is the curve basically, then this is a normal distribution curve basically, and it is basically represented by something like this. This is the normal distribution curve where this is the mean mu, right? So what I wanted to say is probability of, let's say you have to find x is between x1 and x2, so it is nothing but integration x1 to x2 of this fx dx, of this fx dx, right? This is distribution from normal distribution. Clear? Here mu is the mean, right? And sigma is the standard deviation. Sigma square will become variance, right? So sometimes this values of this curve is given to you and you have been asked the value of mean and all those types of stuff.